Okay. Good evening. My name is Nina Abenal. I'm Senior Coordinator here at IEA, and I want to welcome any new families joining us both in person and also on our Facebook Live, and returning families as well for continuing to support these gifted support group meetings. If this is your first time attending a gifted support group meetings, they were basically developed as a way to provide a safe and open forum for parents and educators of gifted children to really share the triumphs and challenges that they might face in raising or working with a gifted child. It's also an opportunity for you to learn from professionals in the field who are really willing to share the wealth of knowledge that they have working with gifted children. So without further ado, I would like to introduce tonight's speaker, who is actually IEA's very own Bonnie Raskin. She is the program manager for the Caroline D. Bradley Scholarship.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you. I'm going to really divide this presentation into several parts. The first part, I'm going to be really gearing this towards parents. The second, I'm going to be gearing it towards students. As we talk a little bit about, in my 14 years at IEA, I've really developed a lot of tips that I think are really important in helping your child and you as parents and educators find what would be the optimal high school experience. But I realize that a lot of you have students who are in middle school and elementary school, and some of these tips are really applicable to all aspects of education, geared down a little bit, certainly in the student area. When it comes to elementary and middle school, I think there's a lot more parental involvement. By the time your child is ready to go to high school, it's much more of a peer relationship between parent and child. But let me begin. So basically, the title of this is Finding the Right High School Fit for Your Child. Parents, finding the right high school fit can really set the stage for the rest of your child's life, academically and professionally. And the key to choosing the best high school for your child first lies in understanding your child's specific needs. But it also requires both child and parents to learn about the various opportunities that are out there. It's wonderful to start listing tips, but if you don't know what's available in your area and beyond, this is really not going to have any pragmatic use for you. So part of our handouts here, and for those of you watching online on our website at our Gifted Resource Center, we've put together schools in the greater Los Angeles area, both middle and high school, that really pertain to gifted students. So instead of talking about specific schools tonight, I'll let you access that afterwards. At first, when you're thinking about the right school for your child, it really can be a daunting task. But I've put together some tips for you that I hope will take some of the mystery and turn it into more mastery for you. And these are really tips that I go over with all of the Caroline D. Bradley scholars and parents to really help us hone in on what would be an optimal learning environment for your child. So first of all, as a parent, you need to define your child's needs. Some children learn and work better in a structured learning environment, while others thrive in classrooms that allow students to guide the process. Look at a school's curriculum and disciplinary policies. You know your child. You know your child better than any educator. Does the school stress group projects over individual assignments? What are the homework policies and the discipline practices? What services are available to help students learn or provide additional tutoring support as needed? Secondly, determine your child's learning style. Is your child a visual or auditory learner? And does he work better in groups or individually? Does your child have any learning disabilities that the school will need to address? And if so, does the school offer specific programs for those types of learning issues? If possible, always talk to parents who have children who attend a particular school that might have certain similarities or areas of concern that you have with your own children. Weigh your options. Today, certainly in Los Angeles, most parents no longer need to limit where you're sending your child in terms of neighborhood schools. There are a lot of options that are available. And this is really where you and your child come into play. Research options that encompass charter, magnet, signatory public schools, as well as independent day, boarding, homeschool, online, early college, hybrid. There's so many educational opportunities for gifted students. Community programs, community colleges often offer early entry programs. So there's a lot to be had when you start looking into this. Another aspect that I think is really important is consider diversity. While diversity may be a significant factor for minority students in particular, a diverse community can benefit all high school students, providing a range of experiences, points of view, and opportunities to hear and learn from people with different backgrounds. Examine test scores and alumni success. And when I say this, what I mean is that schools will almost always on their websites offer you a range of what their test scores are in individually or nationally normed standardized tests. And this is important. It's important, but it's not the be all and end all. It's one aspect of a school. But you can look at trends. Are the scores that students are submitting from these schools going up, or are they declining? This may indicate whether a school is actively pursuing improvement or declining in terms of academic rigor. And this is important. Is there an indication of accommodations that would be made to students who might have learning issues? This is also important if it pertains to your student, because these should be readily available and accessible. Beyond test scores, if this is a high school, check the college matriculation, see where their students are attending, and see if where the students from this school are going are in line with what you envision as the right fit for your child. Granted, this is not at the end of your search, this is at the beginning, but it's still an interesting barometer just to see where students from a particular school are moving forward. If this is a middle school, check to see where they're going for high school. If it's an elementary school, see where they're going for middle school and high school. Look at academic programs. Look for a school where your child's brain will be exposed to a wide variety of subjects, cultures, and pursuits, both in and out of class. Are you looking for advanced placement courses or international baccalaureate programs? Are you looking for programs that are going to be able to accelerate your student, or are you comfortable with just going along the norm? This is really crucial for gifted students because often a student will enter high school having almost completed what the curriculum is offered at that school. So then comes the question, what next? Does the school offer independent projects? Does it offer research? Are you able to access nearby colleges? This is an important question because if you enter high school with the proviso that your student's going to be there for 3 or 4 years, that school has to have a curriculum that's going to engage, challenge, and really energize your child. If you have a child who's very interested in STEM areas or arts or humanities, check a school that has depth of curriculum in these areas, as well as the possibility of taking placement tests to test out of basic areas. This should be something that's very important to you as a parent. Facilities. An excellent school, whether public or private, should offer many kinds of enrichment, from study abroad programs to a diversity of foreign languages and in-depth subject curricula, libraries, computer labs, facilities for art, drama, music, robotics should be offered, and there should be a staff member that is going to be leading these programs. As far as I'm concerned, it's all about the teachers. Many aspects of a school are fundamental. Others are luxuries, but teachers can make or break a child's natural curiosity, whether you're in preschool or you're in high school. Their passion for the subject that they teach can and should ignite a young mind. If your child attends a shadow visit, which I'll talk about a little bit later, to a school, find out from him or her, what was it like? What were the classes like? What was the teacher like? How did the students engage with the teacher? What was the class size? Ask your child if he or she would be comfortable in that class. Look for a teaching staff who can also be inspiring mentors. There's nothing more important to a high schooler than finding adults outside of their parents who they can really communicate with, especially when at times those walls are going to shut down between parents. And it's wonderful to know that there are teachers out there who really are going to bring to your child that level of engagement and enthusiasm that back when they were 7 through 12, they had at home. But I promise you, parents, it will come back. There is a time, though, during teenage years where there's just a natural separation. But if there are adults in the teaching world who are cognizant of this, it will really keep a door open for your child, and hopefully they'll provide a lot of the extra support that might not be provided at home through no fault of yours as parents, but really because your children are really looking to start separating, which is very natural for the time that they're in high school. In education, research has shown that smaller is better. So basically what this means is that research has shown that working in small groups fosters closer relationships between students and teachers, and also that a smaller student to teacher ratio and class size has shown through research to have a much better preparation for students as they enter college. But numbers can be misleading. So when you're looking into schools and they're listing all of the faculty members, sometimes schools will list coaches, administration people, and other areas who are not teachers. So it's really important to look through specific departments and just find out really how many teachers are in different departments, or how many teachers are doing double and triple duty. Now in boarding schools, this happens a lot, where you'll have, let's say, an English teacher who's also the soccer coach, or a STEM teacher who's also working on the robotics team. This is fine as long as there's a real sense that this is a teacher who's not spread too thinly, which unfortunately sometimes happens in the public school sector, but it's really something to be very cognizant about. Working with the teenage brain and not against it. This is a question that comes up a lot, and basically research has shown the teenage brain is wired for risk-taking. And when it comes to harmful or unhealthy behaviors, this obviously can be a negative. So high schools that understand this and really work with the brain and trying to channel it in positive directions is really where you as a parent want to look. And by this, what I mean is schools that have programs that might be outside your child's immediate comfort zone, but are well managed, well navigated. Let's say study abroad programs, trying out for a play, a team sport, a musical performance that they might not naturally do. This is risk-taking, but in the best possible, most comfortable, secure environment where they can still find options for their passions, but they're comfortable enough to take a leap of faith and try something new where they know they're going to be supported. Sometimes this may mean participating in a leadership role, being part of a class retreat, tutoring other students. Risk-taking is a necessary part of identity formation, and we certainly don't want to negate that, but we really want to make sure that your student is at a school where he or she can grow in positive, nurturing ways. Check a school and see what they have for extracurricular opportunities. Any school should be more than just academics. What I stress to all of the scholars who I work with is balance. Clearly, you're at a school to learn, but there's so much more that goes into finding the right high school. There's a social component and there's an extracurricular component. This could run the gamut from sports and specific subject teams to drama, technology clubs, band, orchestra, model UN, debating, poetry slams, field trips, lots of different options that a school should have available to students who want to participate. Also, what about the ability to start a club or to be a leader for your school government? This really should take on much more of a general fit, but at the same time, if you find a smaller school, whether it be private, charter, magnet, or public, that really deals with your own students' passions, let's say a magnet school that's a STEM school or a technology school, and this is an area where your student shines, this would be a terrific consideration. Some people want a much broader canvas. This again goes back to knowing who your sons and daughters are and moving in that direction. There's no right or wrong here. It's really just a question of looking to what's available and being able to partake of it. The best way, as far as I'm concerned, to learn leadership is to practice it. So what this means is that if you find a school that has a newspaper, I want to make sure that it's student run. I want to make sure that the people that are able to put their voices forward are students. The same thing with a robotics team. I want to see that this may be led by an adult, but it's actually the students there who are putting together what they need to make this program flourish. Sometimes this could mean a child that has a passion for a certain activity. Maybe it's cooking, maybe it's sewing, maybe it's welding, that they would have the opportunity to put together a group of like-minded individuals at their school that would be able to do this. If you're at a bigger school, you tend to find more opportunities for regional and national programs. For example, if you're a young person that's really into competitive math, a bigger school may give you an opportunity to be part of a math Olympiad, a science fair, where you could go regionally, where you could go nationally. And for some students, this is really a cornerstone of their high school experience. If you're someone that really wants to do plays or be in musicals, absolutely make sure that your school has that as a program. Bottom line for Los Angeles parents as well is we have to consider practical factors. And what this means is that in addition to all of the options that are out there for students, what about driving to the school? What about distance? What about carpools? How is this going to impact the rest of your family if you're driving an hour two ways 5 days a week? Find out. Is there transportation? Does the school provide it? Is there public transportation? Is that something that your student would be comfortable taking on a daily basis? How does a commute impact the time that your student has to wake up in the morning to get to school? How does it impact after school activities, weekends, social events, play dates? Even in high school, there's group projects. How is your son or daughter going to be able to get there if this becomes a burden for your family? Also, funding. A lot of these private schools definitely offer funding, but if you're in that unfortunate sort of middle income level, the funding is not really going to be merit as much as it is need-based. And this is a reality that is prevalent throughout a lot of wonderful private school options. So clearly, as a family, really know what your limitations are and discuss this with your child. You're all in this together, and an open dialogue is really crucial. If you find that your student isn't talking to you as a parent, lead the discussion. Talk about a school. If they visit a school, talk about their experiences there. Another aspect that I'm really big on with all of my scholars and finalists is observe the school in action. A lot of times open houses occur when school is not in session. And basically, what that means is that they have complete control of what you're going to see. And I think that's great, but visit a school when it's in action. And what that means to me is if you have a student who's a musician, attend an orchestra performance. If you have a student who's a sports person, attend a soccer game, attend a football game. If you have a drama kid, go to a play, because what you want to see is this is where the school takes shape. Who are the participants? What is the audience like? Is a coach screaming at some of the players? Are the parents obnoxious? Are the kids sitting in cliques? I always tell my kids that when you're going to a shadow day, stay for lunch, go to the cafeteria. Who's sitting with who? Are you sitting by yourself? Are you welcomed? Does someone at that school come over to you and say, hi, you look new, I don't know you, can I help you? If you're a parent, go to drop off, go to pickup. Who's dropping the kids off? Is it the nanny? Is it a parent? Is it well organized? Are kids running through the streets and it's not safe? Believe me, these are all issues that parents have told me about. And I think it's very important to see a school as fully operational as possible before you decide whether it's the right fit for you. Talk to your child. Maintain an ongoing open dialogue. While parents have significant sway in the final decision, by the time a child is considering high school, as I said before, it's a really far more balanced situation than when you're looking at kindergartens for your child. But still, as difficult as it may be, this is really an area that I think is an open discussion around a dinner table. Some of the best conversations between parents and children are in the car, when you're driving someplace, when they can take their earphones out and they can really listen and talk to you. Because the reality is they really do want to share a lot of these experiences with you. After selection and enrollment, the following are criteria that I use with all of the CDB scholars who I work with. And this is something that I do often, and this is really about assessing fit. So the first thing is, and again, I take this with a grain of salt, because if we're talking about high schoolers, it's the idea that your child is eager to go to school. Well, how many are? But the converse of that is, does your child have stomach aches every day? Are there headaches? Does your kid not want to go to school? Huge red flag. Your child's not going to jump up every morning and say, wow, I'm so excited about going to school. But at the same time, there should be the point where you do not have to drag your high schooler out of bed to go to school. Secondly, at the end of the school day, even though it's a full day, there still should be some energy and enthusiasm left on the part of your child, so that if he or she is able to participate in after-school activities, there's some there. They're still able to do this. The pace of learning in core subjects is overall right for where your child is. Challenging, but achievable. This is key. There's no benefit at all for your child to attend a school where he or she is struggling. There's no possible benefit that comes from that, because statistically what that shows is that instead of the child persevering and pushing through, more often than not, he or she will shut down. And we never want that to happen. You as a parent see progress in your child's overall development, academic, physical, social, and emotional throughout each high school year. This isn't about stagnation. This is really about moving forward. And each year should hopefully open up new avenues of interests for your child. Also, from your child's point of view, you want them to feel that their abilities and that their interests are being recognized and valued as individuals. This is really important. Every child wants to feel that they have a place in their school. I don't care how big or small the school is. And even if it's one area, it's really important that there's something or someone there as a teacher, as a role model, who can make your child feel valued and important, and that he or she has contributions to make to that school. Also, you want to feel that your child is performing grades-wise and through teacher comments at a level that is where he or she should be. You want your child to have friends and acquaintances at school who accept him or her as the people they are. You want to have teachers at your school that accept your students as the people they are. You want to have teachers that if there's a problem, they are going to reach out to you as a parent to schedule a conference, a conversation. You don't want to find out at the end of a marking period that there are certain issues that have gone completely unknown to you for an entire term. This is, as far as I'm concerned, completely unacceptable, whether it's a public school, a private school, or any form of education. My feeling is that any school should have a partnership between parents and teachers. And I think it's doable. Now, sometimes at the bigger schools, it's going to require you as parents to make the initial effort. But red flag, if you try to reach out to a teacher via email, telephone call 3 times and do not get a response, at that point, you go to the department head. And I often have parents that say, well, I don't want to be that parent. I don't want to be the troublemaker. It's going to come back to my child. Wrong. You want to be an advocate for your child always. That is your first responsibility as a parent. When your child's needs and the family needs fit well, as far as I'm concerned, that's a great fit for a school. So that's generally my thought about parents, but I see we have one student present, and I hope that we have some students out in the audience. So I want to just take a few minutes to really talk about, as students, what I feel you should be looking for as you start this sometimes daunting process. So in the beginning, each school has its own values and culture. And your best school, first and foremost, is going to be one that matches who you are and what your values are. So a lot of times, kids don't take the time to do what I call is a personal inventory. And to me, that should come before any school search. And basically, what that means is, what values are important to you? What are your priorities, both in learning and in being in a social environment? Are you somebody who wants lots of friends? Are you somebody that wants a few very close friends? Are you someone that wants to go through lots of different clubs and activities? Are you someone that wants to focus specifically on areas that are of interest to you? High school, as I said before, is way more than just academics. It's about social interactions. It's about extracurricular activities. These are all building blocks to life, especially for high school. So think about, again, what you want in a high school. If you want to be in a competitive program, whether it's math or science or debate, does your school offer that? If you want to be on a soccer team and maybe you're not a Division I kind of player, but you still want to play, does your school offer junior varsity or a non-competitive sports program? If you hate sports, is there a PE requirement? Oh my goodness, I can't tell you how many times I have to deal with that, where a student finds a wonderful school and, oh my gosh, I have to do PE every term. It's not going to work for everyone. But again, these are all part of research, asking questions, finding out. If you're somebody that wants to be a leader, does your school have student government? Are you able to have an effective and heard voice? How do you find out about this? Well, look at a school's newspaper. Look at student council. These are always listed on any school's website. So this is something to check out. A lot of times when I work with my scholars, they're always asking me about, well, I'm not going to know anyone at school. My friends are going to different places. This is legitimate, but if you're looking to find the optimal school for you, somewhere you've got to take a leap of faith and believe that that school is going to have like-minded peers. You're going to find friends and people who are like you. And if you're mature enough to be proactive about your high school selection, you really have to put your priorities first. What your friends do is what your friends do. And at the same time, you don't need to be an open book when you're talking to people about where you're applying and what you're doing and what your test scores are and what your grades are and who your recommenders are. There comes a point where autonomy is not something that a lot of kids are comfortable with. So as parents, I encourage you to make sure that your child knows that it's really okay to keep some things to yourself. Should everyone be like me? This is where the diversity question comes in. As far as I'm concerned, high school is an opportunity to really meet people who have different backgrounds from you, who have different ethnicities, who come from different stories, who bring different perspectives to the table. So I would always consider diversity, whether you're a minority or not, to be an important aspect in looking for a high school. Certainly, if you're a minority student and you show up at a high school and you see no one who looks like you, I think that this is something where you need to decide if you're going to be comfortable with that for 4 years. If not, it's going to really be a problem in terms of where you're going to feel comfortable. And as a student, you should always feel comfortable where you're going to school. You should be comfortable as the person you are. You should be comfortable with the classes you're taking, and you should feel that you're in a welcoming environment. Discuss your choices with your parents. Again, I'm putting this to students. Your parents want to hear from you. They want to be involved in a dialogue with you. As much as sometimes you don't want to do this, I think it's an aspect of maturity that you do this, that you open yourself up, that you're talking to your parents, that you can share and dialogue. Not everyone in the family has to have the same point of view or opinions, but there should be a level of respect and transparency in terms of how students talk to parents, and the same as how parents talk and listen to students. Sometimes as parents, we have a lot to say. We think we're very informed. Try for a change to listen to what your student has to say, your son or daughter. And I think you'll find in very short order that they will be talking more because they'll feel that they're being heard. So as a student, when you go to a school and you go on a school tour, ask questions. This is the time for you to find out about the school. Usually, whether it's at a public school, a private school, whether you're at an open house, there are going to be student panels that are made up of students who attend that school. So we like to think that these are people who are very knowledgeable about the school. Ask them questions. These are people who are peers. They want to know what you're thinking about. They want to know what your areas of interest are, but understand that when they give you responses, this is going to be their perspective. It's their experience. It may not necessarily be your experience. So what I say to students a lot of times are, you have to be open to listening to other points of view, but you also have to realize that your voice and your experience is yours alone. So it's always great to take in lots of feedback, but I think what I call the triumvirate or the trifecta is your head, your heart, and your gut. When you look and visit a school, these are 3 areas that you really have to think about. Head is academics, curriculum, courses offered, teachers there. Is that going to fulfill you academically? Heart-wise, are there going to be enough activities that are passions of yours, or that you're going to be able to try something new and feel safe in an environment? And gut is visceral. How does it feel? You're on a campus. How does it feel to you? And believe me, if you go in with these attitudes, you are going to feel about a school. I hear this all the time. It didn't feel right to me. It felt great. So then as a parent, what does that mean? How did it feel great? Well, someone spoke to me at lunch. I sat down at a table and other kids came up to talk to me. This to me is a wonderful barometer of a school that really is going to have a lot for you to consider. Don't leave a tour wishing that you asked something. Remember, potentially you're going to be spending the next 4 years of your life at this place. Be sure you want to attend and be present and be able to verbalize why, whether it's to yourself, to a parent, just be able to really understand. And this again goes back to your own initiative and to your own self-understanding, because there are times where you need to look inward to really see for yourself what is going to be a good fit. Something else that I think is really important is that sometimes a school that you select isn't the right fit. You go there with all the great intentions and it's not right. Make a change. This does not mean that you've failed. This does not mean that you have to tough it out after a serious understanding of why the school isn't working for you. The idea in life is that you're able to move from plan A to plan B as a life skill and know that it doesn't mean you haven't succeeded as much as it means that you've been proactive in looking out for your own best interests. So in fairness, this is not something that you're going to change a week after you're at a school, but you should know certainly within the first term whether or not this is a school that works for you. Now, sometimes I work with kids that go to boarding school, and that's a little bit different because boarding school is a huge change in almost every aspect of a student's life. Academically, socially, you're living away from home. You're 14 years old. This is something that usually takes a full year for you to start feeling part of that community. But at a day school, you should really have a sense of whether this is a right fit earlier on. Also, as a student, as a teenager, kids tend to be very judgmental and make very strong first impressions. So my take on that is don't rule out a school for one con. If there's one aspect of a school that isn't right for you, but there are a lot of others that are right, don't rule out a school. It's almost impossible to find a perfect fit, just as it's almost impossible to be a perfect student or a perfect person. There are going to be times where you're going to weigh your pros and your cons. And when the pros end up way more than the cons, that's definitely something to consider. Try to visualize yourself going to this school every day. How does it feel walking down the halls? What's the cafeteria culture like? How are the classes taught? Are the students engaged? Is the teacher engaged? Can you see yourself there optimally for 4 years? Is there enough for you at a school that's going to heighten your experiences, that's going to leave you at the end of high school as a more developed, fully realized individual? What I also encourage you is not to look at high school, whether as a parent or as a student, as a stepping stone to college. First of all, you're not the same person that you're going to be 4 years from now. You're not even the same person you're going to be a year from now. To go into a school thinking that that's going to be your ticket to a certain college, any college admissions person will tell you is a huge waste of time, because in this uber competitive world of college and university enrollment, all bets are off, folks. There are exceptional students applying to schools all over the country with incredible stories, with incredible grades, SAT, ACT scores. This is something absolutely you're going to deal with, but not entering a high school. You want to put that on the back burner. You want to find a school that fits you and is going to allow you to expand and develop in areas that when the time comes for you to apply to college, you're going to have a wonderful profile that is going to be the person and the student that you are. So that's a little bit about my tips as far as for parents and for students, and I'll certainly take questions at the end, but I thought a lot of times what comes up are specific questions that people have about LAUSD and how do we go about doing this, and what are magnet schools, what are charter schools. We have handouts that really go through a lot of that, so I'm not going to spend that much time on it, but I will tell you that every middle school in LAUSD in mid-October, they have school fairs where they set up all over Los Angeles. You can look at any school, you can visit, you can see what the different schools offer, both middle schools and high schools. Also, LAUSD sets out a school catalog every fall that lists every school in LAUSD with all of their programs. They also advertise tour dates throughout the year, usually in the fall, when you can go and visit these schools and take tours. Middle school applications tend to be due on a specific day of a child's 5th grade year. Under LAUSD standards, middle schools are grades 6 through 8. Briefly, magnet schools and charter schools. Magnet schools are all about points accrued. Magnet schools tend to be area specific. So there tends to be technology magnets, science magnets, environmental, performing arts, high achieving, which students need to be tested into. So if you're going to be taking a Raven test or what's specifically offered by LAUSD, they're only offered once during a child's elementary school years. So if you have a younger student, definitely look to take that when the student's in 2nd or 3rd grade. Do not take that when the student is just starting to kindergarten or 1st grade. Seriously, give your child a chance to acclimate to a school. Points are accrued in lots of different ways. Your child can get points in everything from not getting into a school, to being a minority within your school district, to having a sibling in programs. Begin early. If magnet programs are really where your focus is within LAUSD, begin as early as possible to accrue points, because points matter as you move through the system. Charter schools. Charter schools are often organized by a group of parents with an academic advisor in an attempt to break away from a more traditional school. They tend to be more progressive. They have to adhere to LAUSD guidelines, but they're not governed by LAUSD policies. So what that means is that they're able to be more progressive, they're able to offer more course options, but from a parent point of view, what this also means in charter schools, there tends to be more required parent participation. Some of these schools require contributions financially from parents. All of these charters have different parental and student requirements. Easy to find out on any LAUSD website. Also, in some of the handouts that we've given you, it explains it in more detail. There are lots of pros and cons about magnets and charter schools. There's a lot to be said about having an established school versus a new school, but at the same time, there tend to be a lot more opportunities in a smaller charter school that has a vision that you as a family adhere to. There are certain programs that would be considered highly advanced or gifted magnets, like a Walter Reed or North Hollywood High School accelerated program where students need to be tested to get into. Usually these schools are considered academies, because what that means is they're a smaller entity within a much larger high school. And for some students, they've had fabulous experiences in this kind of a program. They are public. Students tend to do very well in terms of college searches down the road, but they are academically very rigorous. And what that means sometimes is that students that attend these programs have to limit extracurricular activities, because the focus in these programs is clearly more geared towards academics. I always encourage parents who are interested in magnets and charter schools to go on wait lists. I believe magnet schools at this point in LAUSD, you can only apply to 3 a year. Charter schools, you can apply to as many as you want. But because so many people apply to so many different schools, there's a lot of movement that goes on. So definitely, if a school like this is of interest to you, always get on the wait list, but be prepared that you may move off the wait list when your child is already enrolled in a particular school. But again, this is a family decision whether you want to move your child during the school year. For some students, you know your children, again, this would be very detrimental. The movement, the change would really topple their comfort level. For some, they're just eager to get in there and go to a new environment. Again, this is all about knowing who your child is and discussing this as a family. In areas that are outside of LA, USD, San Marino, a lot of the areas around Pasadena, there are inter-district permits that are allowed, where basically you can find schools that are outside of your particular district. And if you get clearance from the school where you are living, you're able to apply. And this covers a wide range of schools. And each of these schools have what's called an open enrollment form that lists, for example, at let's say a San Marino school, if that's where you want to have your child go, you can look into what their Open Enrollment Act states. And that could mean that if you have a business in San Marino, it will enable your child to go there. If your daycare is in a certain area, every area is different and they're easily found, and you can certainly read through to see what the criteria are that would enable you to apply. It always has to do with the number of spaces that are available in a certain school, but it's certainly worth checking out if, for example, you're interested in an area that has a very successful public school system like a La Cañada or a San Marino, different areas that you would not be able to attend because you don't live in that area. Often spaces are left open for minority students. So there's a lot of flex in these areas and they definitely should be looked into. When I've given this talk before, parents have asked about a dateline. How do you go about starting to prepare for all of this? So briefly, going out a year before your application year, whether it's middle school, elementary school, or high school, start listening to parents, students, educators at your school to hear what they have to say about possible middle and high school opportunities where their kids have applied to, where they know students have gone to, or are currently attending. A year out is a great time to just start inquiring, see what they have to say, but again, understand this is their experience. But I'm a big believer that a lot of feedback is certainly better than not knowing anything. You can weed through a lot of this, but I think knowledge is always power. See if your son or daughter's school has a dedicated faculty member who facilitates the application process for prospective students. This is rare in public schools, and it's almost impossible in K through 12 private schools for the obvious reason they want to keep your student there. And I think this is a disservice to students who are looking elsewhere, but nevertheless, this is where school consultants come in. It's an incredibly lucrative business for people who specialize in helping parents, but you don't need to go that route. You can, again, find out from people who attend school. If you visit a school and you're there for a soccer game, there are parents there. Talk to them. People love to tell you their experiences of a certain school. If you're at a musical performance, talk during intermission to people who are there. Introduce yourself. Say, my son or daughter is interested in this school. What's your experience been? I think that being proactive about your own education, whether it's from a parent or student point of view, is crucial in this process. The internet is your friend. Check out websites for various talent searches, which often have links to gifted programs throughout the country. Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth, Duke Tip, Northwestern University, Rocky Mountain Talent Search, greatschools.com. There are so many avenues for you to look into that can help you along the way. Discuss with your child. What are they looking for? What do they see as the right school for them? What do you see as the right school for them? This is an ongoing dialogue. Day school, boarding school, charter school, parochial school, online, hybrid, early college. There is no limit to the ideal school if you just take the time to start thinking about it and honing in on what would be the right fit for your student. Find and order or check your local libraries for publications that rank high schools throughout the country. Out of curiosity, does anybody know what the largest single magazine issue in the country is at any given year for the last 5 years? No, it's not Sports Illustrated swimsuit catalog. It's US News and World Report's ranking of colleges and high schools. It sells out every year. And parents, look at this as the Bible. Understand this is a selling and marketing tool. Schools pay to be included in this. So this isn't the be all and end all. If a certain school is ranked #1, it does not mean that if you don't go to that school, that you're somehow not succeeding. Understand that things like Forbes and College Confidential and US News and World Report and all of the guides are really advertisers' inherent marketing tool to let you know about their school. Look beyond a school's website or view book. Some of these are, again, marketing tools. They're two-dimensional views of a school. Visit any school that you plan to go to. You're going to be there, whether it's as a student or as a parent, for 4 years. You can't go to a school blind. You have to visit. If it's the case of a boarding school and you just can't get there, they always have admitted student visits after the decisions come out. And financially, if that's something you can't afford, I've never seen a school not able to assist in this area. You've got to visit a school as a student, as a parent, and feel comfortable that this is where you're going to attend. Over the summer, before application time, look at a school's website. See how it's laid out. See the resources that are available. See what courses are offered. Every school, public and private, lists what the curriculum is, what's expected at graduation, how deep does the curriculum go. For a gifted student, this is a prerequisite. If you have a 12-year-old who's taking calculus BC, where is that kid going to go math-wise in a school that ends at that level? Again, is there independent research? Are there teachers who are willing to work with your student? If this is an area that's important to you, make sure it's a school that's going to accommodate what your son or daughter's needs are. If you're somebody that's interested in taking different foreign languages, what are the foreign languages taught there? You can always find faculty in every school. And it's usually, they have an email, they have a phone number, there's a department head. As a student, I love it when students send emails to these people asking questions. Everyone wants to tell you their story. This is a great way to find out, is a teacher responsive? Do they have office hours? Are they going to be there in a supportive capacity? Do they want to answer your questions? There's no reason, short of a family emergency, that 3 emails in, someone should not respond to you. This is a huge red flag. Who's running the clubs at schools? Are there teachers who are doing robotics clubs? How at that school, if you're somebody that wants to go to science fair, how has that school been doing as far as science fairs? Do they have students that go to regional competitions if that's what you're interested in? Check this out. It's readily available to you. This is one of those times where every school that I've ever looked at has any number of online tools for you to find out information. So in August or September, schools will list their tour dates, when you can go for an interview, when you can go for a shadow date. Book these early. They tend to fill up very quickly. You can always cancel, but if their spaces are filled, they're filled. So basically, an open house is where you get a lot of general information. It's often before a school tour. It's really the first line of resistance where you go, you see a campus, there are often student panels, you get to see a broad view, there are some teachers present, there are tons of people there. It's very difficult to get one-on-one time with anyone in admissions or any teacher because there tend to be a lot of people. Book a school tour, much smaller. You get to go visit different aspects of the school. Now, not every school on their tour is going to take you into a classroom. Understandably, it's very disruptive to teachers and they just don't want to do that. So this is where a shadow visit comes in. Anytime that you as a student have a chance to shadow a school, absolutely do it, whether it's for half a day or a full day. Ideally, if the school admissions team are on their toes, they're going to hook you up with a student who has similar interests. So you're going to go and sit in on classes. You're going to see what it's like, what the curriculum is. If you're in an English class as a prospective 9th grader and you've read this book in 6th grade, red flag, this is a problem. This may not be a good fit for me. I'm beyond this. But if you're in a class where the students are engaged, they're not looking into their phones, they're not having headsets in, there's a relative modicum of engagement, of discipline, of enthusiasm, this is positive. If your student leaves you midway through the shadow to go join his or her friends at lunch, that tells me that the admissions team has really not done a great job in picking who they're going to pick. Your shadow person tends to be your first line of first impressions at a school. So the hope is that you're going to be with someone that you can ask questions about, who's potentially going to really be there to support you. So as far as other questions, if you're somebody that has to take standardized tests to get into a school, find out the deadlines, find out when applications are due, find out if you have to get teacher recommendations, when are they due? This is your responsibility. If you have to submit official transcripts, you have to make sure that you go to the school registrar or administration early enough on that they're going to do this for you. As a student, get a recommender who knows you, who likes you, who is going to advocate for you. Don't go to someone who just because you think that either their pedigree or the class that they teach is going to mean something to an admissions person, because it will backfire. The whole purpose of a recommender is to provide either an academic or an extracurricular point of view into who you are as a student or as a person. If you're someone that does a lot of community service, by all means, have a recommender who is engaged with you, whether it's in a business you started, or you tutor at a school, or you volunteer at a soup kitchen. This is something that admissions people want to see because it rounds you out as a person. If you're interested in learning about boarding schools, there's a wonderful organization that's called, it's TSAO. It stands for 10 Schools Admissions Organization. You can look them up online. And what they do is, these are 10 of the highly selected East Coast boarding schools, and they travel as a cohort to cities all over the country in the fall. And you can sign up and you can go attend one of their events. And basically they talk about the boarding school experience. What does it mean to go to boarding school? And each of the schools that are present have admissions people. So they set up different booths where you can actually talk to someone. If you're interested because you've heard something about the Harkness method that's taught at Exeter, well, there's going to be somebody there you can talk to. If you've heard that the classics program at a school called Groton is exceptional, or the environmental science program at Choate Rosemary Hall is unsurpassed, you'll have a chance to actually meet these people close to home. And often you can have an interview as well. You can set this up through the various admissions officers at the schools. But again, if this is something you're interested in, absolutely check this out, because it's a really wonderful way to just dip your feet into a very different high school experience. I think, I've pretty much covered areas that I think are important, but I'm totally open to questions. But I think the one thing that I really want to leave with you as far as finding the right school is that every aspect of your son or daughter's educational experience is their experience. They're going to get out of it what they put into it. But as parents, you're always going to be there to help and support them in the process. So what I say to parents all the time is that you have to find a comfortable relationship with your child, that you're going to work as a team. You may have very differing points of view, but at the end of the day, when you find a successful fit, it should be successful for both parent and child. Thank you very much. My pleasure. Thank you. Maria, I don't know if you have any questions that are coming. Sure. Any questions here? Anything that I can address either individually or any aspect of this that's relevant for you? Yes.
A question about boarding schools. So for a lot of parents, there's a conflict here because a boarding school may offer this academic depth that they just can't access where they live. I actually sometimes feel like that about Los Angeles sometimes, but that's another conversation. But most parents, like, the last thing they'd want to do is not be there to, with their kids during their high school years. Any thoughts on that kind of quagmire? And
sure.
Are there situations where boarding school can be right for the child, but not right for the parents?
This is one of those discussions that every boarding school always deals with, because the kid sees the boarding school, what it offers, and it's like the Emerald City. They've never seen anything like this. There's labs and there's tons of things. And the parent is going, but you're 14 years old and you're not ready. And a lot has to do with, first of all, is your child ready? Is your child independent enough to do this? Is this something that's going to be comfortable for the child? Then what the boarding school deals with is the parent issue. Now, what's fascinating to me is this is a very regional issue, because most people in California don't have a history the way that people on the East Coast do with the boarding school experience. I rarely have any issue with any of the students I work with on the East Coast when it comes to boarding school, because there's been a tradition of attending boarding school for hundreds of years. West Coast is very different. It's not something that naturally has been a part of our education. Also, West Coast boarding schools, such as Thatcher or Kate, are miles different from East Coast boarding schools. So there's a lot of culture that's different. But in terms of talking to parents, I think that what boarding schools will say is there's always an open line of communication, and it's to really ensure parents that this isn't like college. Your kids are not running amok. There's very specific hours where it's bedtime, where it's study hours. So I think the whole purpose is to mitigate for parents a comfort level where you're going to be comfortable, but it always comes down to, is a child ready to make this leap? It's a huge leap, especially if you're going cross country, if you're going, to New England to go to school, as opposed to Ohio or Carpinteria. It's a lot different. And for some students, it absolutely is a right choice. Whether it's for acceleration, some students have parents that, because of work situations, they're not available to be there in the home. Lots of different reasons for boarding school, but it's not perfect for everyone. Yes.
Question, more kind of the psychological aspect of it. I have a child in 4th grade, and she's used to being the gifted one in the class. She's always managed to always the reading. But I imagine when she's in like a Portola or something, and suddenly it's all that, is there kind of like questions I can ask to the teachers how they handle the kind of psychological whiplash of suddenly not being the number one kid in class?
Absolutely.
What should I ask?
That's you. You should absolutely say, talk to me, if you're talking to a teacher, talk to me about the makeup of your class. I have a child who's used to being a big fish in a small pond. She's going to come in here and suddenly she's going to be dealing with kids who are as bright, if not brighter. How do you handle that within your class? What can I as a parent do to help make the transition smoother? Because that's something that I deal with all the time with a lot of the scholars who I work with. They've never been in an academic atmosphere that hasn't either bored them to tears or where they've been that one person. So we work with that all the time. It's also about, it's okay for some of these kids. Your daughter may never have gotten a B in her life. She may never have gotten below the A or A plus. Suddenly the grading system is different. And of course, they're going to feel, oh my gosh, I'm failing. I'm not doing something right. What am I doing? And that's where, as parents, we really come into play and just talk about perfectionistic issues, the imposter syndrome. You know, they're going to find me out. I'm really not good enough. I don't belong here. What I always tell students is whenever you're accepted into a school or a program, it's because that school believes you're going to be successful there. No school is going to accept you if they think that you're going to fail. First of all, it looks terrible for their boards. And second of all, they just don't want to waste a space. So I think it's really, again, all about communicating, but definitely a teacher should be very well, certainly a first level teacher at either an incoming middle school or high school should be very well prepared to deal with this and see it very early on. Anybody else? Yes.
Kind of along the same lines, how do you, it is a very competitive world and there, even though, you know, we hear about gifted kids, there are a lot of gifted kids. And so how do you set yourself apart on the application and then the interview process? And, you know, maybe you have the test scores and the grades to get in, you think, but like I said, there's a lot
Sure.
of kids out there who also have high scores and high grades. And,
True.
and so what would you emphasize on an application? And would you really highlight the gifted aspect of a student, or would you let their activities more speak for themselves?
Well, any school admissions person is going to see grades and test scores, and they're going to know that your child is gifted or advanced. What I always tell the students I work with is there's no one else out there who is like you. What is your unique voice? What makes you an individual? What is it about you that an admissions person is going to read an essay and say, I want to meet this person. This is fascinating. So that's what I would encourage. Put your real individual unique spin on what makes you you. What are you going to bring to that community? What are you going to bring to the student body? What do you expect the school to give back to you? But how are you going to contribute? How are you and your presence and your gifts going to enhance the school? That's what I would always suggest. And I've never seen that fail. Again, I mean, you look at college and high school statistics, and I was just reading that Harvard could fill their incoming class 4 times over with perfect SAT scores and, you know, weighted and non-weighted GPAs. It's not what these schools are looking for. They're looking for really engaging individuals. And you can be engaging at 12. You can be engaging at 10. You can be engaging at 15. What is it that sets you apart? Why do you want to go to this school? People always want to know in an application, what is it about my school that interests you? So that's what I would. Yes.
One of the common challenges with for gifted children is that there's not differentiation offered in the school that they attend. If you're applying to a school and the school says, oh, we don't differentiate, we don't need to because we teach at such a high level, is that almost always a red flag?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
One size does not fit all for a gifted child. Also,
law school say that.
well, they do.
It's excuse.
And what happens is sometimes also schools lie. You know, their admissions people lie. Yes, you know, we accelerate, and then you're suddenly at a school and it's not going to happen. And that's terrible. So when I know that, I immediately in my research say, this is not a school I'm going to recommend for any of the kids that I work with. Now, often in a high school situation, there are placement tests. Usually it's for math and foreign language, where a student can place out of as far as advancement is concerned. A lot of the top schools offer this. Certainly the highly gifted magnets do. But in areas like English, humanities, they don't, because the feeling that I've gotten back from a lot of these schools is that you may have read Jane Eyre when you're 10, but we're going to read it now when you're 13 and look for different aspects of it. So we want everyone to come in on the same playing field for something like history or humanities. Subsequent years, we're going to start differentiating. But certainly on the high school level, placement tests for math or foreign language are prevalent. Do you have a question or you're just an itch? Yes.
And you mentioned earlier about sometimes the school may not be the right fit. So when that becomes pretty obvious during the year and this school really is not a good fit, can you talk about the transition, how you might leave mid-year, maybe possibly is there an option to go to another school or maybe even to homeschool the rest of the year? Can you
Sure.
talk about that?
There is an option. A lot of times it depends on space, and a lot of times it depends on your child. Sometimes it's much better for the child to stay the course to the end, while in the middle you're looking to apply elsewhere. But if it's just intolerable for whatever the reason is, I mean, sometimes gifted kids have major disciplinary issues where the teacher is just completely turned off to them because they're that kid. They ask too many questions, they're too talkative. So for a child to have to deal with that every single day, that is what I call a psychic crush. That is something that is debilitating, and you've got to get your kid out of that atmosphere, whether it's to change a class or to leave that environment, because that becomes a mental health issue. But a lot of times, if a school has openings and your child can move in, it absolutely can be done, but it's a lot of pressure on your son or daughter because they're going to have to make up a lot of work. You know, it's not as easy a transition as to come in at the beginning of the year, but it certainly is doable. I've had scholars that I work with who have transferred mid-year to other schools, but it puts tremendous pressure on the student. You're the new kid, and you're not the new kid at the beginning of the year. So in addition to the academics, there are the social issues, but certainly if it's something that is really affecting the health of your child, you've got to make a change.
And the homeschool option?
I have lots of students that I work with who are homeschooled. Colleges, universities, high schools, they all recognize homeschooling as an absolute viable alternative. Hybrid programs, online programs, Khan Academy, there's so many options. Stanford Online, there's lots of different options. Whenever I have students that do online or homeschool programs, I always stress for them, find options that will put you in touch with other peers though. Have activities where you're going to be physically in proximity to other kids, which is crucial for a high schooler. So I hope that answers your question.
How hard is it to transition if you had to leave mid-year into one of these online or hybrid schools?
Online tends to be more difficult because just of the logistics of the program. But again, I would check out with the various programs and ask. I know that Stanford Online does not accept mid-year transfers. Khan Academy, I believe, does. I think Google has an academy. I think they do. There's definitely ways to check to see if that's feasible. Private tutors. There's so many homeschool groups in the area that welcome you to come into.
And then another question follow up with that, the private schools and some of the homeschools, then you start dealing with coursework that is not WASC accredited. And then how do you deal with that when you go to college?
Every school is going to have a list of what their graduation requirements are. You can always look on any college and they're going to let you know going in what is required. In our programs, we have a homeschool template that's based on what we've seen as probably 50 colleges and universities, what they require as far as incoming students. Also, more and more advanced placement programs are being phased out because colleges and universities are no longer willy-nilly giving students credit when they're coming in for these classes. And a lot of gifted students are not always going to excel in AP classes that teach to the text when they want to go much deeper. So again, it's really about finding what's the right fit for your student. We found that a lot of our students, our gifted kids, find that they can do a lot of AP classes on their own. They take the exam at the end and they get the credit. Yes.
Do you also work with younger kids, like not applying for high school, but like elementary school applying for middle school?
We have at the Institute for Educational Advancement, we offer consulting. We have an academy program where youngsters between, 10 and 14, Nina, can come and take all kinds of advanced classes. Specifically, I work with students who are in 7th grade applying for the Caroline D. Bradley Scholarship, and I follow them right through high school and stay on with them beyond, because I spend a lot of time with them.
Yeah, I can tell from your speech. Yeah, I have 4th graders.
Oh.
Like, we just moved from East Coast, so
Oh, okay.
like everything's new here.
Sure, it's very, very different. But please check out, go to the Institute for Educational Advancement, check out our website. We offer wonderful classes for young people, accelerated learners. And for some of them, it's the only time they really feel that they found a place where they can learn at the level that they're comfortable with.
Yeah, looking forward.
Terrific,
It's fun to
welcome.
be here.
Great, thank you for coming. Anybody else? Great, well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming, and thank you, audience. This was our first pancake in this area. I hope it turned out well. And good evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Bonnie. We actually will not be hosting a gifted support group meeting in December, but we'll convene in January with 2 gifted support group meetings. So one is about engaging Generation Z gifted students and social emotional imagination in gifted education. So if you're interested in registering for any of those, please go to our website and we have our gifted support group meeting page. Okay, thank you again, Bonnie.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.